Hi there and welcome to this PWN video. Today we have veritable PWN royalty in front of us. We have former President Marijo Bos and our current presidents Sonya Richardson and Rob Baker. Rob and Sonya will be stepping down at the end of May, because their term of office has come to an end. As with all good volunteers, at some point they have to walk away. And so today we thought it'd be fun to have former President Marijo interview Rob and Sonya to tell us more about what their volunteer experience has been like and to hopefully encourage you to become a volunteer with PWN in the future. So I will pass over to you, Marijo.
Thank you. Well, it's so great to be here and to hear and see all of you, Rebecca, Sonya, and Rob, again after 4 years away. And I would say that their term at PWN is coming to an end, but their new lives are just beginning. So that's one of the themes we're going to be talking about. So let me start by just congratulating both of you for your commitment, your 4+ years to the networks at a global level and then at local city levels, and for all the things you've accomplished. So I know we don't have a lot of time, so we'll touch on some of those things. So let's just get started with some questions.
Great.
So welcome.
Yeah, super.
Thank you. And thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. You guys are right now in Geneva?
We're in Zurich.
Zurich.
We're presenting at a conference here on DNI. It's one of the big annual conferences that takes place. And I guess one of the kind of things that we tend to do a lot of. Yesterday we were working in Paris together on a workshop for a corporate partner that we have. So yeah, in Zurich today.
Oh, that's great. Well, I know that this role requires a lot of travel and speaking, so.
Well, and it's important, because today I'm speaking on equal pay and a big theme. Rob here is going to be putting the mill perspective on this, and you've even brought your VR goggles, haven't you?
Well, that's right, because I'm going to be talking later about how to build empathy to really drive inclusion and understanding, if you like, between men and women and all sort of aspects of diversity, really, and just how we can use some new ideas to do that. And one of the things we've been doing is working with virtual reality, which has been great fun. And just I want to talk a bit about some of the experience there. So yeah, it's one of the joys of this role, I think, at PWN, is we get to talk to others about the great stuff we're doing and the great network that we're both part of, and that's something I think we enjoy every opportunity we can get to do that.
Yeah, and even what I'm constantly running into after being in this role for 4 years, and Marijo, I'm sure you recognize this from when we had some big shoes to fill when you stepped out, but there's something about, we know this stuff. Right? We know all the research, we know everything, we know the full business case, we know what happens in organizations, and you are confronted with that message just needs to be conveyed time and time again. And that, something that might feel quite basic to us now in terms of messaging, somebody will walk up to us and say, wow, I didn't know that. Yeah. And so the part of just educating and communicating and constantly making sure that we share the message. I think if you are in a president's role or in a board role, or if you're a member of PWN, that's actually what you've got to be doing most. You've got to be making sure that you're constantly talking and having that dialogue. Because without dialogue, the whole concept of gender balance, it is our mission, achieving gender balanced leadership. But without dialogue, I think, we're lost. I think it's very much up to us to share and share and share.
And I think, just adding to that, I think the great thing that PWN has done has led the way with gender balance by getting people like me involved, men involved in this. And what I think we've really done, and I think it's fabulous, is giving a voice to the men who are concerned about this and want to be part of it, and face some of the similar challenges, etc. So I think it's fabulous that we get the opportunity to liberate, if you like, men to talk about this as well.
I think you guys both mentioned this. That's one thing we have to remind ourselves constantly, is that we have a lot of the research and the facts and the experience from working across a lot of different companies and industries, and having those one-on-one conversations with members in our community that oftentimes they don't dare to have openly with their organizations. And sometimes we think we're sharing the obvious, and then we realize that it's not the obvious in a lot of organizations. And I was reminded that even going to a dinner with International Women's Forum leaders yesterday in Barcelona, a lot of the conversations, even in the United States, are a little further behind than some of the conversations we're having in Europe. And so we think it's repetitive or obvious, and it's not. So it's keeping the message going. And on that note, I want to ask you, let's start with you, Sonya, and then pass it on to you, Rob. What are the initiatives or advancements over the last 4 years with the two of you, leading the organization, that when you look back on, that you're most proud of?
Well, that's a great question to ask, Marijo. I think there's two things that we try to do within PWN. One is we try to inspire women, our members, the community that belongs to us. We try to inspire them to kind of have the confidence and to step up and to go for that promotion or go out into that world and say, yes, I can, choose me. And I think, through all of our city networks, we're doing wonderful work to make sure that we do inspire those women, and we do give them that extra kind of positive nudge to say, go on, you can do it, step up to that role. That is key. And I think, very proud of the developments that I'm seeing there, where, if you look at that group of women, we're more intensively looking at women who are coming back into their careers. We're more intensively looking at women who also at an older age and finding it difficult to get back into the workplace or to actually make those steps. So we're doing all sorts of programs in addition to what we already did was, have a great network for the women who are, let's say, around middle management to senior management and have kind of just gone through the regular steps of life. But we're also looking to support those women who perhaps stepped off that ladder when they had kids, and then coming back in. Another group that we're seeing that more and more younger women, need support, need a network. So we're also looking at how do we really support that younger generation. We live in a more flatter world, and these are women, if they do stand out within their organizations, can make very quick journeys to higher roles in their organization, and making sure that those women also feel supported when they run into the first hurdle, and all do, of course, because they enter into a structure that is more male than female, a system that actually has more masculine traits than female traits. So I think in terms of that, I see that we're doing wonderful things. On a broader perspective, back to what we were just discussing around messaging and making sure that we constantly repeat what we know, and engage to make sure that people do enter into that dialogue and don't kind of veer away from it. I think we live in the digital world, which is a great thing, and what we've done over the past years, which I'm very proud of, is really make sure that we do push out the content, we push out every bit of knowledge that's out there into the wider world. So through all of our social media channels, our digital platform, I think making sure that we do really touch people, even though it's not in those face-to-face events or the face-to-face kind of moments that I was just describing, but through the digital channels, making sure that we give more visibility to this theme. And I think just really
what I'm hearing is that great opportunity to connect from the experienced, more mature leaders and have a dialogue with them, and also the young 20-something leaders. I think that's without a doubt one of the absolute skills and strengths of PWN is the ability to connect across generations.
Yeah,
and that should not be underestimated. Yeah,
and across
genders
also. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what about
if we've got a lot of connections with many business leaders, through our corporate partners, our own connections. And I'm just noticing that people are very much, picking up on, yeah, PWN, wonderful, we'd like to work with you. So there's a very positive vibe there. So very proud of that.
Great. Well, I know Europcar is one of your partners, and I have to tell you, I just rented a Europcar for 5 days in northern Spain, and it was the best experience. And I highlighted that PWN was a partner, and they recognized that. So that was really nice. I want to just promote them. They were great. Hey, Rob, tell me on I think making this transition for men across generations from that 50 plus experienced leader to the young 20-something, how are you connecting with men on this message of gender balance? And does the message have to be quite different?
Well, I think firstly, just going back to your question about like what am I proud of, I think I think one of the things I'm most proud of at PWN is the engaging men work that we've done, because I think it was very far-sighted of you and the PWN board at the time to invite me to join the board as the only man on the board and get other gender. So that was a major learning curve for me. But I think basically it is understanding that we probably do need kind of different messages in the sense of I've been thinking about engaging CEOs and C-suite, but we've also got to be engaging men at all stages of their careers. I think the good news is a lot of millennial men that come into the workplace already get the case for gender balance, because often they have partners that are working as well, and they're sharing a lot of the household duties. I mean, we talk about the work-life balance, right? And it's very important that men are doing their part at home as well. So I see there is a sort of difference in perspective there. Some of the CEOs of the baby boom generation, they're not used to even making a cup of tea in the morning. There's kind of like they're used to having stuff done for, or even have their wives pack their suitcases for them, that kind of stuff. But I think what's really been great is that we've been able to engage a lot of men in this journey, both the baby boomer generation, if you like, and the millennial men. A couple of things I'm very proud of. One of them is that Greg Young, who is the CEO of Leadership, I worked with him sort of pretty early on. He's now co-president of PWN London. So it's really great to have another man so publicly and visibly involved with PWN. And there's Paul Walentinovich, who runs his own leadership firm. He's been very passionate about the cause. He's been speaking for PWN on the whole gender balance issue as well. And there are many more. So I would say so that one of the things I'm really proudest of is the fact we've now got men talking about their passion for this and their involvement in it, and also being more open about their own desires to have work-life balance, to be good partners in this journey as well.
That's exciting, and we are so looking forward to the time when it's 30% men. Like, we always try to get 30% women on boards and in activities, because just the fact that you can name the men who are involved, we want to get beyond that. So you can't even name them anymore because it's 30%. We're on that track, which is fantastic. So really, really great to hear that. And you all are now at 30 networks, I hear. So that's really terrific too, because I think when I stepped away, there were 26, or we were just about to do the 27th. And so that growth there has been really wonderful. I have a question that can be a little bit, controversial, and it's definitely a hot topic right now. And it's the Me Too movement. At PWN, I remember with Aviva, the founder of PWN, which used to be EPWN many years ago, the French Canadian Aviva, she would always pass the message on that it was an evolutionary process, not a revolutionary process necessarily. And so the Me Too movement, and even some of Aviva's work and others' work, has become a little bit more revolutionary because it hasn't moved as quickly as we would like to see it. Tell us, Rob, why don't you start, about how you see this sort of Me Too and the sort of revolutionary aspect, and is it making an impact, and how do you see it moving forward?
Well, thanks, Marijo. I mean, I think Me Too is having an impact, but like with all these things, it can have some unintended consequences as well, which I think we need to be aware of. I think the great thing is that Me Too basically is highlighting the whole issues of power imbalance and how, you know, some men in the past and even currently, having behaviours, if you like, that really are not behaviours we want to see either in the workplace or at home or in life generally. So I think, you know, we certainly need that awareness, and you know, men need to understand what it's like from a woman's perspective. You know, and one of the big aha moments for me was when I read a book called Everyday Sexism by Laura Bates, which gave the woman's view of what it's like to be on the receiving end of all these aggressions, whether they're microaggressions or more serious harassment type stuff. And it was a real eye-opener to kind of the experience that women have every day. And I would recommend that every man reads that book. So I think with the fact we've got Everyday Sexism. It started off as a website, and then she wrote a book based on the experiences, because so many women wrote to her about or put on the website their experiences of everyday sexism. So as I say, men should read it as a complete insight into the world that women inhabit, and you know, that was a big aha moment, as I mentioned, for me. But I think the other side of this is that I think what we ought to be aware of is that men are feeling a bit uncomfortable about this whole Me Too movement as well, because they're not sure, even if they've got great intentions, how to behave in certain circumstances. You know, will their behaviours be misinterpreted? Will they be called out for something which maybe they didn't intend? So what we're seeing is a bit more caution around men potentially in getting involved in things like, you know, working closely with women and with mentoring, for example. So I think we've got to acknowledge that there is that, you know, concern there from men, but I think we also got to encourage them to be bold, basically, and say, listen, you know, if you've got the right intentions and you show respectful behaviour, you're very unlikely to get involved in a Me Too situation. If obviously you've got disrespectful intentions, then, you know, you might end up getting embroiled in this. But in general, what I found, and I mean, you know, I'm being reverse mentored, for example, by a young woman in our marketing department, and you know, I could, I guess, in theory, be a little bit nervous about interactions that we have one-on-one. But frankly, what I think is, if I've got the right intentions, I show the right respectful behaviours to her, I'm not going to get into that situation. So I'd encourage all men out there to get involved in mentoring, to get involved working with women, but to think through and just make sure that they are, you know, being aware of the need to be respectful in their behaviours and avoid situations what might make women feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, because Sonya, you mentioned something around this. What are the statistics around this?
Well, and I was going to say, I think the Me Too, as you said, we need some catalysts to help us, you know, speed up the process to accelerate to gender balanced leadership. And I think what you know, all of the things around equal pay and in certain countries quotas and, you know, the Me Too movement, I think they help us speed up until it polarizes the debate. And I think that's, you know, that's a point where what we've seen is, you know, from the research that's done into this, we know that a third of women and 50% of men know someone who's been falsely accused. We also know that there's 65% of men who don't feel they want to be stepping into a mentoring relationship or a sponsoring relationship. Then it turns into a negative. I think the Me Too sparked a debate. Yeah. And I think the books that, you know, and the people who are sharing this message,
it surfaced a lot of problems.
Yeah. And it should open up a dialogue around what feels intrusive to me as a woman. And you know, so it's kind of, it's shifting the paradigm. It's helping us, you know, redefine what our relationship is in the workplace. Right? That's what we're talking about here. So if you use it in that way, and you actually have that dialogue, you can use Me Too in a very positive and effective way. And you know, there are many organizations who've picked it up excellently, and there are organizations, and I would maybe say in, let's say, the older structures, the older type of organizations, who perhaps haven't done it so effectively, and that's when it kind of segregates and it polarizes. And that's just not a place where we would like to see it go.
Yeah, I think the other thing is that Me Too obviously is seen as, quite rightly, as a topic, you know, that women have been very vocal on and that men need to address and be aware of. I think there's another aspect to this as well, which is that, you know, kind of men can often harass other men as well. You know, I famously describe myself as a beta man. You know, I find alpha male behavior, you know, quite challenging at times. And I know there are circumstances when men bully other men, for example. So, you know, how do we have that? How do we have that debate and that discussion? Because I think there's a lot of men that would like to talk about their own experiences as well as this. There's a broader harassment issue, and we need to bring that up. Well, I'm not saying we shouldn't, you know, play down. We should obviously play up Me Too, etc., because it's very, very important. But I would say also, let's recognise that there are issues of harassment in the workplace that affect, you know, men as well. So we should, you know, bring them along and let them feel part of this. This is all of us who should feel comfortable to be ourselves in the workplace, and we should feel free to be in the workplace without any abuse of power or any poor behaviours towards us. So I think we need to make sure that we let men know that we're just as concerned about this for them as well as for women.
Well, and when we talk about stats on this, you know, if you look at all of the stats of male depression, male suicides, you know, they are skyrocketing. And I was speaking to a very young man on Tuesday about this when I was on a panel together with him on the Me Too movement. And he was saying that, you know, what is happening is we as parents are raising our children more and more to, you know, kind of step in that world that would reflect a gender balanced world. And men who therefore are allowing themselves to be beta males rather than, you know, stepping into that alpha male, I'm going to carry that burden kind of role. They step into these, they step into the working life, and they find that they don't fit. Equally to how we women have experienced that over decades, we don't fit. It's the culture that we don't fit in, and I believe that it's actually more threatening to men in that sense than it is to women, because, you know, that these men, the new millennials, are stepping into these roles and finding that I can't be myself here. And the stats on there, you know, on male suicides, depression, mental, you know, all sorts of issues, I think is something we as a society should definitely look at, because it requires a change.
It really feels to me it's more about power and the abuse of power. And so if we really link it, and more than anything, the Me Too seems to have really at least put the elephant highly visible in the room. So we're having conversations around power and being yourself, being authentic, not having to become like the sort of dominant male character in business. So so it's really great. So I know we're running out of time. I just want to talk about one other thing briefly. And what I'm seeing a lot is and just came up in conversation over dinner in the last couple of days about, and this happened to be specifically on like women on boards, and specifically in California now, the state passed a law where there has to be one woman on every public company board by the end of 2000, which is, you know, immediate. And I heard an interesting point that when they had a meeting on this topic specifically, that like 90% of the women showed up to debate and talk about how we make this happen over a breakfast, and only 10% men, when generally on every other topic it's 50-50. That reminded me of the fact that oftentimes when a man, you know, sort of is standing up and out for some of these topics, they get their voice heard more than when women do. Do you find that to be the case between the two of you as co-presidents, a male and a female, of a women's inclusive focused network? How do you see that in terms of whose voice gets heard and has the most influence on this topic?
We've never done that piece of research. It would be quite interesting, actually. I think, Marijo, one of the reasons, you know, we do talk about gender balanced leadership. We ourselves saw that we were not a gender balanced. We did not have gender balance. The board, of course, you know, from the have was female only until Rob came on, and I think, you know, making sure that we role model what gender balanced leadership can look like is very relevant. I think what happens, if I reflect on this, you know, anecdotally, I think what happens is when Rob is in that room and speaking to male leaders, it's a connection. It's as if the guys in the room feel like, oh, so a man can do this. And it kind of shifts their way of thinking. If it's me, the story might be compelling, and I might actually be convincing them intellectually. But that kind of feel of, can I also step into that role? I think with Rob in this role, it's super helpful to just allow these people who do feel fearful, who do feel on the defensive, who do feel that they're not part of this, that they can step into it. So I think that's from where I'm sitting, that what I've observed.
Yeah, and it's interesting because reflecting that from my perspective, certainly, I know there are situations where if I'm speaking to a group of women, to some extent, the power of my argument is a little bit limited because I can only talk in a very limited way about, what it might be for a woman's experience and perspective because I haven't lived that personally. But when I'm talking to men, there's a sort of extra kind of authenticity, if you like, that comes through from the fact that I share the same gender, I share probably a lot of the same experiences. And what's been very powerful to me is been getting groups of all men together to explore men's issues, because it's almost like the men say, hey, look, you know what, we're all men in this room, so now we can let our defenses down a bit and talk more openly about what our challenges are, because we're all facing the same kind of stuff. How do we pursue our career and yet show we're dedicated fathers and parents, etc.? How do we show the fact that we don't want to work 24/7, 7 days a week, travel everywhere all the time? We actually want some balance to our lives. How do we express all of that without being judged by our leaders as being less than serious about our careers, etc.? So I think we put both of these perspectives to good use. I think, but I think you're absolutely right. I think being able to reach out to men from a man's perspective is very powerful, and that's obviously one of the things I've been very glad to do in my work with PWN.
But to your point there, Marijo, just very briefly, you talked about the 10% in that room. Now, on the 10th of October, we're organizing our annual awards dinner. So it's going to be happening in Dublin. We're going to have around 450 people in the room. If only 10% of those are men, we've absolutely failed. We need to make sure that we get a lot more men in that room and have that debate, have that conversation happen there and then. So I'd say to all the men out there, make sure you put it in your calendar. Bring your colleagues over, and let's make sure we fill the room with lots of men.
Absolutely. October 10th. So we're inviting you all to join us, and all of us will be there. So you'll meet all three of us, plus a lot of other leaders and influencers on the inclusive leadership agenda at PWN. So we really hope to meet you all face to face. We invite you to join us. And so in closing, just want to say, thank you so much for the dialogue and for giving me the opportunity to have a conversation and reconnect with PWN. So when you just, in closing, think of literally simply 3 words. If you could pick, and let's all three do this, because I haven't really even thought about this. So if you could pick one lever that you believe would just make a big, exponential difference and exponentially advance gender balance and inclusive leadership across cultures, what is the one thing that you would do?
I think the one thing that we should be doing in our organizations is working around the concept of curiosity. If we aren't curious about each other, there's no dialogue. If we don't allow curiosity to kind of go into conversations with an open mind, wanting to understand the other better, we aren't able to then have the courage to step forward. So for me, very much it starts off with let's just harness and foster the curiosity I think we were all born with, and let's make sure that we create more curious organizations.
Okay, and I think for me, it will build on that and say I would like to see men getting more curious about what it's like to be the CEO of the home. okay? Because I think if we want to have this gender balance revolution and see more progress, we've got to get, you know, all of us taking more seriously the balance between work and life and what needs to happen in the home. And there's a fabulous book called Fed Up, which was written by a woman who was basically fed up with constantly bearing the mental load for the home, even though she and her partner had equally demanding jobs. And her question was, what is it going to take for men to co-own the CEO, you know, the leadership of the house and the home and the children? You know, what is it going to take for men to step up and co-lead that? Because that's going to be the real revolution that's going to, you know, support the revolution we need to see in the workplace as well.
Yeah, interesting. Well, those are really both very good points, and it's a combination of everything, right? I'd like to see us, I will be a little controversial here, I'd like to see us follow a number of the guidelines and norms and even laws that Finland and the Nordic countries have put in place that really, really push that gender balance in the home and across the culture. And across just wellness, and they're showing that it contributes to a happier life, a more balanced life, a more harmonious life. Sometimes I think it takes that little extra push, and then everyone's like going, wow, why didn't we do this 20 years ago?
Totally agree. Totally agree. Yeah, with you on that, Marijo.
Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
No, as I say, I think we're thinking about the future as well. The thing I think we've got to see also is this recognition of what we call intersectionality. In other words, we've got to think just not about, you know, women or men. We've got to think about ethnicity. We've got to think about ability, disability. We've got to think about thinking styles. You know, for me, a lot of the discussion, a lot of the people involved in this, you know, still aren't diverse enough, if you like. So we've got to think, okay, we need gender balance, yeah, but we need ethnic balance. We need, you know, a disability, ability balance, and all those different balances we need. Because otherwise the conversation still happens in one dimension, and the experience of black women, for example, versus, you know, white women, or black men versus white men are very, very different. So we need to really make sure we're bringing everyone into the discussion and the debate. That's going to help us forward. Yeah.
So, oh gosh, this has been fun. We could go on forever, I'm sure. So I hope to see you guys soon, and I'll see you October 10. Really look forward to that in Dublin. Have a wonderful conference at the D&I. Just keep pushing it, make all the difference, get everyone to hear your messages, and keep the dialogue going as you guys have been doing. And it's, you know, progress. So thanks.
Thanks, Marijo.
Thanks, Marijo. Wonderful to talk. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Marijo, and thank you to you, Sonya and Rob. We're going to have this video wrapped up and put up onto our YouTube channel. And if you're interested in becoming a volunteer with PWN, if these people have inspired you, which I'm sure they have, then please visit our website and go and have a look at our volunteer opportunities, or just join us as a member. Come along to a networking event, take a look at what we do. We're sure we can help you, and we're sure we can improve the world together. So thank you all, and we will sign out. Have a great day.
Thanks for your great work, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.